Shalom, shalom, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment and produce a short video to give you some simple foundational guidelines from Scripture so that you can prepare for the Feast of Unleavened Bread and remove the leaven from your house without stress and without worry. A lot of people, they get all stressed out and worried that they're not doing it right or that the Father is going to punish them for not doing it correctly. And one sister told me that she had been told by a number of different people all kinds of different things that brought so much confusion. And what I want to do today is just bring some scriptures and some clarity so that you can have a peaceful and deeply meaningful Feast of Unleavened Bread. We're going to start with Exodus chapter 12 and verse 15. It says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. It's the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's what you're going to be eating. You're going to be eating bread that is unleavened. Indeed, on the first day, you cause leaven to cease from your houses. In other words, by the time it starts, that first day, you should have all the leaven out of your house. Now, in the ancient days, they would leaven flour by using a starter lump. In other words, sourdough. A lump of bread that had already been leavened. They just take a small portion of it, mix it in with the flour, and in no time, that flour is leavened. As the scripture says, a little bit of leaven leavens the whole lump. And so when the Torah is talking about the leaven, it's talking about that starter dough. It's talking about that sourdough that they used to leaven the flour. Now, if you have a bag of leaven that could also be used, or if you have flour that has the leaven already in it, or if you have some sort of chemical agent, then you need to have those leavening agents out of your house, because the idea is that you are to eat unleavened bread. You are not to eat leavened bread. And so the Torah says if you get the leavening agents out of your house, then you won't have anything that could cause leavened bread in your house. That way you can eat unleavened bread for 7 days. And so we're not talking about yeast that's in cosmetics, or yeast that's in cleaning solutions, or yeast that is in some other type of product. We're talking about yeast that is designed to be mixed with flour to produce a leavening of the flour. So that's all we're looking at. We're looking at baking products that could leaven the flour, and it's all right to have the flour. When the children of Israel came out of Mitzrayim, they had their flour. They just didn't have the time for their flour to be mixed with leaven and for it to rise. And so they ate unleavened bread on the journey. And that's what we are to do, to remind us of that time of being brought out of Mitzrayim with a mighty hand, with a mighty Elohim, showing his power and bringing his judgment against the false deities of Mitzrayim. And it also is to remind us of the fulfillment of the picture of the emancipation of the children of Israel out of the house of slavery. It points to Yeshua and the fact that we've been delivered from the slavery to sin through the sacrifice of our Passover lamb, Yeshua. That's why it should be a celebration, not a time of being stressed out. And so by the time the first day of the feast rolls around, you should have all the leavening agents out of your house. But remember that in the ancient days, it was that starter dough. So it's not looking for yeast in all kinds of other products. That's what stresses people out. All right. It says, for whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that being shall be cut off from Israel. And so the punishments that are associated with doing it wrong have nothing to do with someone finding some leaven later after the feast started. It doesn't say anything about punishments associated with somebody that found a crumb or a crouton in a crack somewhere. It's talking about those who eat leavened bread. All right? So if you find something later, just throw it out and go on. Don't get stressed out about that. And then we're going to look at verse 19. It says here, for 7 days, no leaven or that starter dough or that bag of yeast is to be found in your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened, implying leavened bread, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. Again, the punishment is associated with eating leavened bread, not with finding some leaven somewhere after the feast had started. It says, do not eat that which is leavened. In all your dwellings, you are to eat unleavened bread. It's that simple. It's the feast of unleavened bread. All right, let's go over to Deuteronomy chapter 16 and read verse 4. It says this, and no leaven, again speaking of the starter lump, should be seen with you in all your border for 7 days. Now, in this case, it says it shouldn't be seen with you. That's just another way of saying you shouldn't have it on your possession. You shouldn't have it in your house. So this is not talking about leavened bread. It's talking about the leavening agent. So number one, the first thing you do is get all the leavened bread out of your house. That's easy. You just look for leavened bread and you remove it all. But don't forget about the freezer and the frozen waffles and all of that. So you remove all the leavened bread out of your house. And then number two, you remove the leavening agents out of your house, both natural and chemical. Anything that is designed to be mixed with flour to cause it to rise. If it's designed to be mixed with flour, if it's baking soda or some other baking product that's designed to be mixed with flour to produce a leavening effect, then get it out of your house. All right. And then have peace. Once you've searched and once you've done your cleaning and once you've removed both the leavened bread products and the leavening agents, then relax. You already know you're not going to be eating leavened bread for 7 days, and that's where the punishment came in. If you ate leavened bread, you would be punished according to Torah. Well, you're not going to do that. If you find something that you missed, then just throw it out and have peace. All right? Now, let's go over to Exodus chapter 13, and we'll read starting with verse 3. Exodus chapter 13, beginning with verse 3. It says, and Moshe said to the people, remember this day in which you went out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery, for by strength of hand Yah brought you out of this place, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten. It's that simple. Don't eat leavened bread. And then we continue with verse 7. Unleavened bread is to be eaten the 7 days, and whatever is leavened is not to be seen with you. And leaven, that's the starter dough, and leaven is not to be seen with you within all your border. So you get rid of the starter dough, or you get rid of that bag of yeast, you get rid of that chemical leavening agent, and that way there's no way that your flour can be leavened. So you'll be eating unleavened bread for 7 days. It's pretty simple stuff. And then let's go to Exodus 12:39. Exodus 12 and verse 39. This is the context of the feast. It's the scriptural context of the feast, what you should be thinking about as it relates to your preparations, all right? Verse 39 says, "And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Mitzrayim, for it was not leavened." So they brought their flour, they brought their grain and their flour, but they didn't have their starter dough. And so there was no mixture of the starter dough with the flour, and they certainly didn't have the time to wait on it to rise. They were in a hurry to get out of Mitzrayim. It says, "And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Mitzrayim, for it was not leavened, since they were driven out of Mitzrayim and had not been able to delay, nor had they prepared food for themselves." And so they brought out their flour. They didn't have their starter dough. They had no leavening agents. So they just cooked their bread. It was flat bread. It didn't rise. It wasn't leavened. It was unleavened bread, and they ate unleavened bread along the journey. And that's why we eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Again, it's the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's not the Feast of Unleavened Cosmetics or the Feast of Unleavened Cleaning Products. You're not looking through all kinds of things to try to find yeast somewhere. You're not going to mix bleach or cleaning products or anything else with flour to cause it to rise. It's those things that are designed to bring about the leavening of flour that you get rid of. Again, in those early days, it was the starter dough. Most people don't have starter dough because they don't make their own bread. It's easy for people to buy bread at the grocery store. So not everybody makes their own bread, so they don't have starter dough. But you might have some flour that was pre-leavened. Well, you have to get rid of that. And you might have a bag of leaven that you purchased just in case you were going to make some bread. Well, you need to get rid of that. And you may have some chemical leavening agents that are designed to be mixed with flour to cause the flour to be leavened. And if that's the case, get rid of that. But none of all these other things, all right? This is a celebration. You should have joy. You should stay focused on what Yeshua has accomplished through his death, burial, and resurrection, and not be stressed out, not be suffering some mild psychosis, but instead be rejoicing in what the Father has done for us through his Son, our Master and Mashiach, Yeshua. So keep these things in mind and have a peaceful and deeply meaningful Feast of Unleavened Bread.